welcome back to ESBR Boxing's YouTube channel. Delighted to be joined by Owen and Elliot. This is actually a reaction video to a video that we put out of one of our own. A couple of days ago, we put out a video called Boxing's Wildest Takes. Owen put out his take as he thinks that Floyd Mayweather swerved / avoided Amir Khan in certain parts of his career. And Elliot Grigg has taken exception to that. So we've come to sort it out and have a debate amongst the two of you. Gents, fair play to you both for stepping up and doing this. It's all going to be very respectful, I'm sure. We're going to see, get some opinions flying around, and I'll do my best to try and keep control of the situation. Owen, start with you. Just to go back to kind of when we recorded that video. Why do you think that Mayweather swerved Amir Khan?
For the record, I'd just like to start with, as I stated in the video, I don't think Khan would have beat Mayweather. I did see some of the replies on Twitter to the video, and that was one point I did want to make. I don't necessarily think he would have beat him. However, my opinion was, when Khan had that run after the Braiders Prescott knockout, when he fought Maidana, Zabjuda, Paulie Malignaggi, etc. I think that was the best we've seen Amir Khan. Frightening hand speed, lightning combinations, and I just think he would have posed the most problems to Floyd Mayweather with his style at that stage of his career. Listen, but the whole point of it is a bit of a wild take, but I do genuinely believe that at that stage, Floyd didn't necessarily want to fight Khan. He might have fought him, might have had negotiations of a fight at a later stage. If they fell through, I don't know. But I do think at that stage where Khan had that run of fights where he become world champion, I do think he will get avoided. Yeah,
and I think also you're not using the word scared. You're not saying kind of he was running away from him or scared. I think he chose not to fight him and fight other people instead, basically. Elliot, what was your initial reaction to what Owen said?
I didn't really want to say anything, man. I just think keep feeding him some slack, keep feeding him the rope, and let him just keep tethering up and hanging himself. Frankly, because I think, look, like I suppose we're talking about. Okay, so I was going to ask you actually, Owen. I was going to let you pick the rope by which I want to strangle you by, but it seems that you're going with that sort of run around sort of 2008, 2009. But I suppose we are complicated a little bit, I suppose, by what Paul was saying, which was in the video. I felt, a bit disadvantaged. I have obviously seen the video. Obviously, with Mayweather essentially taking a career break at that time, having I suppose obviously gone through De La Hoya and Hatton, and then coming back in 2009. So I suppose, would it be fair to set some parameters for this video, Stotty, to maybe go from sort of 2009 beyond? Talk a bit about the run there. Is that fair enough? Because I mean, otherwise we're just arguing essentially about a man who was on holiday for a deserved rest, fighting against a guy who become world champion. So,
well, I think I imagine Owen's got a certain time period in his head. If that time period is when Mayweather was on holiday, then so be it. If it's now, then so be it. But I think we need to be in accordance with the time period that Owen's talking about. It's his opinion.
Well, that run of fights I spoke about, Amir Khan fought Zabjuda in 2011. He fought Maidana in 2010. I'm pretty sure Malignaggi was 2010 as well. I think Thalita was end of 2009.
So okay, let me go from there. So obviously the Zabjuda. First, we'll take the Zabjuda. Obviously, Zabjuda was a credible win for Amir Khan, but Mayweather did also beat Zabjuda, a lot younger version, a lot fresher version. Is the first thing I thought when I thought of that. I mean, Zabjuda I think was 34 when he fought Amir Khan. And that may not seem a lot now, obviously, where people tend to go beyond, but there was a period around that time where if you were like, even football or whatever, sportsman, when you hit 30, 32, you were finished. So that, for me, is a question mark there. But what I would say is, let's talk about Floyd Mayweather. Let me break down Floyd Mayweather first and foremost. Came back, obviously, from the career break, fought Marquez. Got a slight bit of tap from it. This will be a history lesson, and questions will be taken at the end. But first and foremost, just strap in. So he fought Marquez. Marquez was a world champion at that point, granted a couple of weight divisions below, but still obviously handled him, came back. Then went into, what I'm going to ask you, Owen, actually, the end is, where would that fight have happened in this run that he went on? Then fought Shane Mosley. I think no one was necessarily questioning that. Mosley coming off the Margarito win. Then where does he go? Into an actual world title fight at his weight, which was welterweight at that point, against Victor Ortiz. Then when Amir Khan's fighting the weight division below, a weight that Mayweather I don't think had fought at since 2005. So again, like, is he going to go down as the A side and fight Amir Khan in a weight which, frankly, isn't his natural weight? And then from there, we've got the other, the world championship run against Cotto, fought his mandatory against Guerrero, won the ring championship at that time, then fought Canelo, then fought Maidana twice, and then goes into Manny Pacquiao. So in that sort of stretch, my question to you would simply be, where would you put Amir Khan in those lists of opponents against a guy who's fighting guys in his actual weight division who for championship fights? The Maidana one, granted, wasn't, but I think Maidana at that time had beaten Broner, hadn't he? Just before that, coming into it, there was bad blood, and people at that time were also saying, like, as I suppose you're going to say now with the hand speed, you put someone like Maidana in against Mayweather, he won't be able to handle it. Pressure fighter like that, he won't have the skills to do it, whatever. Got a dodgy split decision, and then obviously went through and beat him convincingly after being bitten. But at the same time, my question, just I'll pass back over to you. 5 minutes left of the history lesson, I suppose, is at which point would you have put Amir Khan, or who would you have replaced him with in those lists of opponents?
Listen, you might think it's a cop out, but take your pick. He's the money man. Whatever makes the most money, whatever makes the most sense with Floyd Mayweather. So take your pick with Khan. I think he would have potentially made more money than quite a few of those names. The Shane Mosley fight, for a start, Shane Mosley hit Mayweather like he'd never been hit before. He was holding on for dear life. Although we come back to obviously dominate the rest of the fight, let's make it clear that Shane Mosley not necessarily was close to stopping him, but Mayweather was hanging on for dear life in that round when his world got rocked. So would he fight Amir Khan after that? Probably not, no. That's too dangerous after that. But it's like you say, it is a hard one to put your finger on where he would fight him within that run. But Amir Khan as a world champion, an ex-Olympian, silver medalist for Britain, how much money is that going to make? The PR from our side would be unbelievable. So take your pick wherever you want to put him.
Owen. Shane Mosley's a man with 40 KOs and 49 fights. Amir Khan's a man fighting at lower weight divisions with, I think, maybe less around a 50-60% knockout ratio. You cannot be comparing the power at welterweight of Shane Mosley to the power of Amir Khan. And if you are the money fighter, you are obviously Mayweather, you're the money fighter, you can choose who you want to fight. What are you talking about? Why would you drop down to weight you haven't fought at for, at that point, 6, 7, 8 years to fight a guy down there? Or you can have Amir Khan come up. I mean, we saw what happened when Amir Khan came up previously. I just think you can't make a credible case for this, Owen. I genuinely don't think you can make a case that he swerved him, given the world champions that he's faced, the Ring magazine titles that he's won. There's no argument to answer, in my opinion. The only possible bit you could say where they could have got it on, I personally think, would be the time where Khan did eventually step up and he fought Collazo, I think, Alexander, Algieri, on that little run where people were going, okay, maybe these guys will fight each other now. Around the time when Mayweather was sort of fighting, Maidana, Pacquiao, and then he got decapitated by Canelo, and that went out the window. So I think there's nowhere it could have gone in. Stotty, I don't know if you got any thoughts to add on this. You're a man who's between us in ages, so you don't necessarily feel the ageism, disrespect that some of us like myself would feel about someone like Floyd Mayweather being more of our era. Is there anything you'd like to add on it, or do you see it playing out? Frankly,
what would you make? Because Mayweather's been criticised I would say, the second half of his career of being quite selective about fighting certain opponents. Some people say he fought Canelo when Canelo was still very young. He waited a very long time to fight Manny Pacquiao. By the time Pacquiao was pretty much finished, kind of that Pacquiao fight should arguably happened 6, 7, 8 years before it did. I think he fought Shane Mosley, Marquez, Oscar De La Hoya when they were all past their best. That's not my opinion. That's just what a lot of people have said. I'm saying impartial here. But would you agree that Mayweather, not throughout his whole career, but throughout large parts of his career, was quite selective and fought a lot of fighters when they were past their best? I'm not saying that would have been the case with Khan, but would you agree with that opinion that he was quite selective? He did swerve some fights. Why didn't the Pacquiao fight happen for so long?
I mean, the Pacquiao fight is a difficult one. I think in the sense that I think I mean, I'm not going to take me wrong, I wasn't there, but I think what it was stated, wasn't it, around the time that Mayweather essentially got that over the line by visiting Pacquiao in a hotel room and offering 20, 30, 40 million or something to get that fight going, realizing I think that his legacy was done. I think, yeah, granted, I'm not going to sit here and argue that fight wasn't made when it should have been made, of course. But equally, if Mayweather didn't want to fight that Juice head fucking 3 or 4 years earlier, mate, so be it, as far as I'm concerned. There was still, granted, there might have been slightly easier fights, granted, for world titles, though, we're talking about here. And you're talking about the Canelo one. Canelo was young, don't get me wrong, it wasn't the same version. That was one of the few things Danny and I agreed on the other night. It wasn't the same version that Mayweather fought, obviously, with Canelo. But equally, Mayweather, he fought him in 2013, I think, and then retired 4 years later. Had brittle hands potentially at that point anyway. So to a certain degree, was managing his career, I suppose, coming down the stretch. It wasn't necessarily his fault that Canelo was young at that point. I just feel it's very hard. De La Hoya, yes, maybe to a degree. De La Hoya was on the slide, but even bookies wise, I think at that time had De La Hoya favourite. And De La Hoya put on essentially a surprisingly decent performance when you consider what sort of happened after that. Hatton was in his prime when he fought him. Berto is the one that stands out to me where I can sit there and go, yes, that was a clear cherry pick, but I don't blame him for it, frankly, at that stage of his career.
No.
Conor McGregor doesn't count. So
I don't
up until that point, I can cherry pick even the word cherry pick for me is a bit much. It's like, don't get me wrong, he's not got the sort of like Duran kind of record or whatever where you sit there and like, even Canelo's now, he hasn't got that to the same degree. But you're still looking at names on that list and you're going, okay, they might have been slightly past their best. But like, take someone like Cotto. I mean, Cotto was still, that's what I said, trying to fights after that. Still, it's just, we're talking about Amir Khan here as well as one thing. And fighting people who are slightly older is one thing, but swerving Amir Khan is frankly a different thing. And I more in agreement that he fought guys that may have been slightly older. Mosley being another one, but Mosley again had his drug problems, so in many ways was preserved on the inside. But yeah, I just feel like, I just can't make a credible case, mate. Unfortunately for the Amir Khan one.
Do you think Mayweather fought someone with faster hands than Amir Khan, and fought someone who was because Amir Khan is 8, 9 years younger than Mayweather, I would say. So do you think there's an example where Mayweather's fought someone who arguably at one point had faster hands than him, was quite a bit younger than him, and had quite a bit like kind of miles on the clock, you would say? Do you think he fought someone?
Not faster hands, out and out, no, than Amir Khan, frankly. But I mean, when I think of guys that he fought that did have fast hands in the kind of prime years of their life, Zab Judah stands out. Even Corrales to a certain degree, don't get me wrong. They had attributes that Amir Khan didn't have, such as durability, such as chins. One was a southpaw. Other guys he fought, like I said before, like when it comes to Maidana, there were guys like, you could sit there and talk about, I suppose, Amir Khan's style as being a potential problem for Mayweather, which it might have been, only because we haven't seen it. But people were sort of there talking about, those roughhouse styles, those guys, even like Cotto, or even like Maidana, that he wouldn't be able to deal with. And then you see it, and all that shit just goes out the window because you've seen it at that point and you can't talk about it anymore. Yeah. Manny Pacquiao as well, don't get me wrong, it was way past his best. But Manny Pacquiao still fought for how many years afterwards against other champions? Still won a world title. So you're sitting there going like, like where do you draw the line really between going, okay, you wanted Pacquiao at a certain stage? Granted, we all wanted Pacquiao at a certain stage, but the guy still carried on for X amount of times. Beat Broner, for example, or like beat Bradley. All those sort of like different names of that nature. So it's just, for me, it just seems Thurman. It just seems, a bit, a bit harsh, frankly.
And so I'll hand things back to Orion after just this final question. Why do you think it just didn't happen? The fight between Mayweather and Khan didn't happen because Mayweather just wanted other fights. He didn't want to give. I think Mayweather was quoted as times in his career when he said, "I am nobody's payday." Maybe Mayweather didn't like Amir Khan, didn't want him to make money from him. Why do you think that fight didn't happen? Because it was in demand at stages. At stages, Khan was one of the top welterweights at the same time that Mayweather was. I think, to me, the fight that stands out was the Khan versus Devon Alexander fight, which is a fantastic performance by Amir Khan. And I think like early 2015 would have been a great time for that fight to happen. Why do you think the fight didn't happen?
I think that would have been the time where it could have happened, granted, if he had fought Khan maybe instead of Marcus Maidana. But I think there was I think it was a combination of things. I think it was weight primarily is why it was delayed. I think gyms, the sense of like obviously having that kind of rivalry against the wildcard gym, but also having seen Maidana beat Broner, who he's close to at the time, I think kind of shoehorned Maidana actually into that fight when it could have been Amir Khan. And to be honest with you, I think it's a British way of looking at it in some ways. Don't get me wrong, I feel like Amir Khan obviously was at one point a world-class fighter, but equally for Mayweather, if you're in that environment, like like you are the A side, you fought world class fighters throughout what 10, 15 years of your career. It's just another fighter, frankly, to my mind. And there are other people that he preferred to fight. I don't think he preferred to fight him because he was intimidated by Amir Khan necessarily, but I just think it was just the way it fell out. I mean, the guy's like what lineal champion in 4 divisions. I'm not going to sit here and say he was intimidated by anyone. So it just seems to me like it was more regrettable from a British fan's perspective, but equally not a big deal for me personally.
Okay, and Owen, like this is going to hand things back to you now. Just thoughts on what, thoughts on what Elliot Griggs said.
I do agree with some of his points. I think I agree with what you said, where there was points in there of his career where he was quite selective with opponents. Like, not taking anything away from Mayweather, he is one of the best ever, and that's factual, really. But I just think when you look at it, like Mayweather fought Maidana 3 years after Amir Khan fought him, and I think the chin. Obviously, Prescott knocked Khan out. Granted, it was a great punch early on. The fight was only ever going one way. But Amir Khan against Marcos Maidana fought him when he was a killer, 27 knockouts at that stage, and he went to Hallenbach with Maidana and got the victory. And that was before Mayweather went in with him. So the fact Mayweather picked him after does stand out to me a bit. I know Zab Judah was a little bit older, but Khan was comfortably winning the fight before he stopped him. Zab Judah dropped Mayweather. I still stand by it. You get punched, your glove touches the floor, it's a knockdown. Any other fighter on the planet, that was being scored as a knockdown. And I think that's simple as that. I think there were, like you say, separate stages. I think it was rumoured, like you say, over a couple of periods when Khan sort of had that run that I mentioned. And then when he fought, we stepped up to welterweight to fight Luis Calaza and Devon Alexander. I still think he beat Devon Alexander that night. I think it was a harsh decision, but so be it. But I do understand some of Elliot's points. I just think at the time, there was a period where Khan was flying. He could have easily made the step up to welterweight because he did anyway. Eventually, that's where he ended up. So I don't think it would have been a major thing for him. And there was not necessarily called for it, but there was rumours. It was in the media, that type of thing. So was he a dangerous opponent for Mayweather? Yes. In terms of, it was, like we say, he hadn't really faced a fighter with hand speed like that. I'm not saying he was scared of him. Bloke is 50-0. Well, as Elliot said, the McGregor one don't count, so 49-0. Is not going to be scared of anyone. Let's be honest. But I think the way it should come across is, like you said, Elliot, selective choices. It wasn't that he looked at Amir Khan and thought, oh my God, he's frightening sort of thing. But I do think the performances we've seen from Khan over the years, it was a problem that Mayweather had never really faced before. So to entertain it in those periods, would it have been the wisest decision? Money-wise, yes, but not necessarily would have tainted his legacy, but it could have been an interesting night's work, let's put it that way. And that's personally what I think.
I think it's easy for us to sit back and look at this now. When most of the time, like you're saying, there were calls for it here and there, mostly in Britain, but most of the calls, if not all of the calls around 2014 until it happened, were for Manny Pacquiao. They just happened to be gym buddies with Khan, and it kind of got caught up in that a bit. Personally, I think it wasn't. I don't think it was really that close, and I don't think it should have been that close. Really, I mean, it would have been compelling for a bit, but I'd tend to sit here and say like he'd have beaten him when he was small as well. I just don't think it would have happened. Not saying you did say he would have beaten him, but I don't think it would have happened or been close to happening.
We're nearly out of time, gents. I think just it's been respectful, it's been enjoyable. Going to end things by asking both of you what would have happened. I think I know who both of you are going to say who would have won, but in a nutshell, what would have happened? Elliot Grigg, going to give the floor to you first.
I think Mayweather points, frankly. Even though he'd been bigger, I don't think Mayweather at that point wasn't the pretty boy Floyd Mayweather before, and he obviously had brittle hands, he had broken hands as whatever, and hand troubles before. So I don't think he would have necessarily I don't think it would have stopped Amir Khan, frankly. But I think it would have been a case of Amir Khan eye-catching stuff in the beginning, Mayweather controlling the distance, essentially moving out of the way, doing maybe a little bit of that shoulder roll business. But I don't think I think when it got to sort of like rounds 5, 6 onwards, Mayweather just asserted himself, frankly, and done what he wanted to do. So it would have been, for me, a sort of, I want to say, like maybe an 8-4 type of fight for Mayweather.
Okay, so you're giving Khan a fair amount of credit then. Like, I think if you're fighting 12 rounds against Mayweather and you're winning 4 of them, that's not bad.
It's not bad, but then equally, I think there would have been that sense of him just going out and doing like his roadrunner hands for the first few rounds. I don't think Mayweather, like, you know, when you see like different guys he had fought as well, tends to like not start slow as such, but there was that terrible cliche about downloading data, and he would have essentially just been like constant, kind of going backwards a bit and like letting Khan like, let off those flurries, which wouldn't necessarily have been like injurious in any way, but would have been eye catching. I don't see him necessarily standing there like he did with Canelo, and you know, like doing that early on, because obviously Khan's hand speed's a lot better. So I just see it being kind of, and then maybe remember that Maidana got a split decision against Mayweather. So like weird things can happen on the scorecards, but I still give Khan a chance of definitely a few rounds, maybe 3-4 rounds at best.
Yeah. And Owen, we'll round things off with you. What would have happened?
I do agree with that. I think it's more than fair assessment. I think Floyd would have tried to start off as he does, quite not necessarily quite slow, but I think with someone like Khan with the flashy hand speed, I think knowing Floyd, I think he could potentially try and showboat a fair bit to begin with. And then obviously when Khan he punches that fast, he's going to land punches at stages trying to fight. He was out, like Greg said, he was out of his Pretty Boy Floyd era. So I'd say points. Wouldn't be a shutout at all, I don't think. I definitely would give Khan 4 rounds. Like you said, Maidana got a split decision. So if Khan started fast and early, there's no reason why he couldn't get 4, maybe even 5 rounds. But I do think the latter rounds, Mayweather's IQ was stupid. So I think he adapt and he would learn to deal with it. Which I did say in the initial video that I did think Mayweather would win the fight. But yeah, I think Khan's hand speed would trouble him to an extent. We've seen it with Canelo, first sort of 4 or 5 rounds, obviously before he fainted and landed that game changer shot. I think there was points where Canelo sort of was looking at Khan like, fucking hell, like where are the hands coming from type thing. So yeah, Mayweather win. 8-4 is probably fair, to be fair. 8-4 around that mark.
Fine. All right, we're going to leave things there, gents. Thank you very much for your time. We'll never know if Floyd Mayweather swerved Amir Khan, so maybe this whole thing was pointless, but we had fun doing it, and we'll never know what would have happened. Elliot and Owen, thank you both very much for your time.
Thank you very much, mate. Thank you guys for watching.